Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Oh, friends, here we go. Welcome, friends, to the show where we bring the behind the scenes to the forefront. And that is what we are doing today. Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And let's get right to it. Let's bring in our extra special guest for this week's episode. Thank you once again to our friend Michael Klug, but he for putting us in touch with this gentleman. And we are pleased to welcome Charles de Lauzirika.
Woo. Is he there?
There he is. Woo-hoo.
Sorry.
Did you hear your applause?
I did.
Sir?
I heard the applause, and
Okay.
I heard the 90% correct pronunciation of my name. So thank you.
Oh, I was so close.
It wasn't the pronunciation. It was the confidence. You didn't have the confidence. So
Oh, no, you're well, it's because I was trying to click on admit and I was like, why isn't he here? I was trying to time it correctly.
Your headshot threw him off.
Charles
You have a sort of
de-
intimidating gaze in that picture. Right?
that explains a lot of the failures of my life. Is my intimidating gaze. People don't want to look at me.
So yeah, a few weeks back, we're doing a deep dive on basically the Ripley Alien movies. We didn't go into every single one, but we did those four, the quadrilogy as they're called. And our buddy Michael, while I was saying, first of all, if you're into these movies, you have to see these. And I sort of thought this up on the spot, so I really butchered your name. I mean, I didn't even really get much of a name out, but I knew who you were, and I loved those docs, and I just really wanted our audience, if they love the Alien films, because, you do top 10 Michael Mann films, and we get a certain amount of hits. You stick Alien on it, and it gets a lot of excitement because of nerds, we think.
Yeah.
And Michael's like, "Ooh, I know him."
Yeah,
So I said it.
I
I said it good enough that at least he recognized who I was talking about and that he was acquainted with you, which thank goodness. Because here we are, we're sitting amongst just one of the leading, certainly in the digital era, the leading film documentarian in existence, in my opinion, and a guy who's got a man of many talents, who's made a feature film and has a short film that's, as he says, wrapping up the festival circuit right now. And we're just super honored to have you here, man. I'm a really, really big fan. I will try and remain authentic and not get too dorky over you, but I'm really excited to be in your presence. So I wanted our audience to know that in case I start acting weird.
Well, I appreciate the invitation, and it's nice to spend a Saturday afternoon talking movies. So
Yeah,
great.
For
Happy to
sure.
do it.
So first things first, just so folks know where you are and how you came to this, you're a big part of when you look at your filmography and your works is your work with Scott Free and Ridley Scott in particular. You were before you started documenting behind the scenes work for him and doing these archival projects for Ridley, you were working for him in some other capacity, and it sort of evolved. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, I started with Tony Scott. Actually, I started as an intern. I was at USC Film School, and most of the smart film students there were aware enough to say, you know, we're going to be graduating soon when we need to find work, we need to make money, we need to do stuff. So I started interning like crazy. I interned at like a few different companies and tried to expand the network and try to get experience and just try to get out there. And I did it at a few different companies, but the one that I seemed to really lock in with was Scott Free, as you mentioned. And I began as an intern for Tony Scott, and then that evolved into me reading scripts for Tony, and then that evolved into me being his preferred reader. And then somewhere along the lines, Ridley had read some of my script coverage for Tony, and then suddenly wanted me to read for him. So I started reading scripts for Ridley. And then that evolved over time, and I started working more and more in development. I would like do story notes on projects that were, you know, being actively developed for pre-production, such as like I Am Legend. I on Ridley's version of I Am Legend, I did tons of notes on that one. So that was an interesting experience to have. But you know, around that time was when DVD started warming up, and I had heard through the digital bits that Fox was preparing the first box set, the Alien Legacy box set of the first 4 movies for DVD. And at the time, Fox was not exactly the DVD friendliest studio out there. They eventually became that, very much so. But those early days, you know, the studios were kind of involved in this sort of format war between DVD and DivX, and everyone's trying to figure out what the next step was going to be. So in any case, I encouraged Ridley to get involved because, you know, Alien is one of his crown jewel movies. And
Sure.
I thought he should, you know, at least let them know that he was interested in how his film was being presented. So anyway, that began this whole process. And finally, I kind of briefed him on what DVD was and kind of how it worked and the interactivity of it and the extras and all that stuff. And he was leaving to go shoot Gladiator, and he just asked me if I would, you know, sort of be in charge of this for him while he was gone. And I said, sure. It was so like random. I'm like, okay, yeah, why not? And that began, you know, years and years and years of the DVD and Blu-ray racket. And
can you, not to go backwards too far, but can you, for our audience, can you explain quickly firsthand what a script reader is?
Well, so
it is what it sounds like it is, but just for people who kind of aren't familiar with the
it's a little bit more than just reading a script and going, yeah, right. That's good. That's good. Thanks.
It's a little bit more, not much more, but a little bit more. So basically, you know, agents, you have to understand, this is in the 90s, and it was a slightly different landscape back then. If you can imagine like Robert Altman's The Player, it's more like that world, right? It's evolved, or it hasn't evolved, evolved is the wrong term, but it's definitely transformed into something else, I think, these days. But in any case, you had agents trying to get their scripts, their clients, their writer clients, try to get their scripts attached with directors or actors or studios or whatever. So in this case, you know, just tons of scripts would be coming in to try to get Ridley or Tony attached as a director. So they don't have the time to read those scripts all day long. So they have like a front line of readers. And then if a reader likes something, that'll get passed on to someone else, usually a junior executive of some kind, a development executive, or depending if it's like something really hot, like we got to jump on this because, you know, other people are going to go after it, then it might go directly to like the head of the company or Ridley or Tony. So that's the process. So basically you get a script, you read it, you try to analyze it as best you can. You write a synopsis, like a 1-page synopsis or so. First you do a log line, which is like the movie encapsulated in a sentence or two. Then you do a synopsis. Then you do your critique of it, your review. Like, why is it good? Why is it not good? You try to be as specific as you can so that when the coverage gets passed on to the person it's intended for, that person has a better understanding, and they can actually talk to the agent or even the writer and say, here's why it doesn't work for us. Here's maybe what you might consider changing. Here's why we like it. You know, just that type of like intel, so that they can have a meaningful conversation without having to actually read 100 scripts a week. You know, so it's kind of like that. It's basically just a filtering process, and everyone does it. It's like it's not something that's like unusual. Every single company and filmmaker and actor and agent and basically anyone in the business, if you have like a company or an operation, like a serious operation of any kind, you have readers.
Right. Cool. Did you ever read anything that turned into a movie?
Yeah, Beautiful Girls, actually. Beautiful Girls, I read, I liked a lot, and I recommended it. And it didn't get, you know, all the way up the chain, but I remember reading that, thinking that's a really good script, and that's going to get made, and it did get made. most of the other ones I read that I really loved did not get made, but like a form of them sort of got made, or some, you know, some kind of morph mutation, whatever, of that script became something else.
Yeah.
But
Something that moved its way through the Hollywood conveyor belt and turned into
correct.
something different.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're working on Alien Legacy. When did it change? When did it turn from you were, you know, supervising this with Ridley to you were doing long form, you know, feature length documentaries and extras for the entire series?
Well, you know, there's some stuff in between. So basically, the Legacy box that came out, in which I was really just supervising that one, and then I worked on Gladiator and Hannibal. No, it was Gladiator and Legend, kind of like around the same time. Again, in a supervisory capacity, because those discs had already other producers involved, like J.M. Kenny made the Legend documentary. So I was basically
which is a great
sort of
one for people who
yeah, no, JM did a wonderful job, and actually I really credit JM for like bringing me into the fold and teaching me the DVD producing process quite a bit. So I got to kind of shadow him and learn a lot from JM. And so I'd be there for like the commentary with Ridley, or I would just sort of like, you know, we would kind of brainstorm on some things while he was making the documentary. I was focused on, can we find the director's cut? Because the director's cut was lost for quite a period of time. And when I say lost, it wasn't like literally lost. It was just we couldn't figure out, you know, where it was, what's the right cut, what condition is it in. And
right. Just for Legend you're talking about?
Just for Legend, yes. Yeah. So in any case, that was like the educational process for me, was to learn how these things come together, what's the process with the studio. And so I worked on Legend, I worked on Gladiator with Mark Atkinson at DreamWorks, and then Hannibal came up, and I met with the folks at MGM, and I said, you know, I think I got this now. I think I can do it myself, if that's okay. And they're like, well, we'd like to have an established producer doing it, but you can still, you know, supervise. So, oh, okay, fine. And this, I'll probably say the story from my memoirs, but something happened on Hannibal that opened up an opportunity for me to take over as the producer of that project. So I did. And I have Anthony Hopkins to thank for it, actually. But so basically, I became the solo producer on Hannibal on the DVD for that, and that was the first time I got to work on like a full making of documentary and all the extras, the deleted scenes, the multi-angle breakdowns, and whatnot. So
that was a big, very cool 2-disc set back in I remember in the DVD era. And then the Blu-ray came out, and they just excised all that.
Oh, did they? I thought the Kino version had most of it.
It does. It has it all back, but it just, there was a 10-year period there where, which is sort of a bummer. But but it is out there. Kino has a 4K disc of Hannibal, if you're a Hannibal Lecter fan, and a Blu-ray, and it does have all of that great making of stuff. It was a really good set in its time.
Well, it's my understanding that the multi-angle content that I worked on for Hannibal or Speed or even Alien, I believe those don't translate to the Blu-ray spec. So I'm not sure I've seen it in action. If you know how they deal with it, sometimes I think they just put up the 4, you know, kind of quad angle of a 4-angle, you know, bit of content. But in any case, so yeah, that was the beginning of that process for me to like start producing on my own. And around 2001 or 2002, Sven Davison, who worked at Fox at the time, asked me, you know, Fox had this 5-star collection line that I had produced the content for Speed for the 5-star collection of that, which was a lot of fun to do. And so Sven was like, you know, we'd like to do a 5-star of Alien, like a 2-disc set. So it'd be the feature with commentaries and then bonus features. And I'm like, well, that's cool. I feel like Alien's been done. It's like there's been so much done on Alien already. Do we really need to do Alien? I said, how about Alien 3? Because that one has not been done. There's a lost cut of that out there somewhere. There's really been no behind the scenes, like meaningful, like deep dive behind the scenes on Alien 3. And it has an amazing story about the traumatic journey that film took, you know, from script to screen. I thought that's the juicy story is that one. So, and they're like, yeah, well, maybe. But let's talk about Alien. So anyway, that conversation literally went on for about a year or so, where Sven would call up like every 6 months. How about Alien 3, or how about Alien 5-star? And I say, how about Alien 3 5-star? And then finally one amazing day, he called and he said, so Alien 5-star collection. I said, yeah. How about Alien 3? He said, how about you do all 4? And I was like, you know, it's like, be careful what you wish for, you know? So, so that began like a year and a half, I think, of not just the documentary content, because I decided let's start fresh. Let's approach the documentaries on this across all four is almost like a tapestry, basically, of documentary content that just sort of like we can interview certain people about all four movies. We can interview some people, like for instance, I love in the Alien 3 documentary the interview with Michael Biehn.
Yeah, me too. We talked about that in the show.
Yeah, I listened to that actually just before this began, just to get to speed.
Yeah.
And you're wrong about some stuff, so we'll talk about that at some point.
Okay. Well, at the end of this segment, we can definitely do that.
But anyway, so that just sort of began this process of like, okay, let's look at the whole 4 movie saga, right? I did not come up with quadrilogy, by the way. Someone else did. And everyone in my office were like, "What the hell is quadrilogy? What does that mean?" So when the Blu-ray came, I'm jumping ahead. But when the Blu-ray came up, I begged Fox, "Can we call it anthology? Because that feels a little bit more, And they said, "Yep, no problem." So we switched to anthology for the Blu-ray set, and it was good because it distinguishes the different boxes. You got legacy, you got quadrilogy, you got anthology.
Yep.
In any case, that began like a year and a half's worth of the documentary capture and editorial, and then also the special edition cuts of 3 of the 4 movies, because Aliens already had a special edition going back to the Laserdisc era.
Yep.
So we were looking at doing extended cuts for 1, 3, and 4. And that was epic. I mean, we had a huge crew of people, of editors, of post-production people, visual effects houses that each had a piece of those films. And it was a lot of fun, but a huge responsibility to get it right. And in some cases, you had like 3. You had David Fincher who wanted no involvement at all, And,
right.
I definitely tried to get him, and there was a couple nibbles at it, but he never could quite get him to sign on. And I understand why. I totally get it. And then Jean-Pierre Jeunet on Resurrection, who he seemed fine with everything, but I'm not sure he fully understood what we were really, doing in terms of like creating a new cut. And we had to kind of re-explain some things now and then. I'm guessing it was just a lost in translation type of thing. But
sure.
So, and then you had Alien, the original, that really was, aware and interested and on it. And we even had a much longer cut of the so-called Alien director's cut. We had everything cut back into it, and we screened it at Fox, and Ridley thought it was too long. And we're like, yeah, that's why you cut it down to the cut that we had in 1979. Like, but that is the perfect cut of the film, and you correctly got it down to the best film you could get it to.
Right.
This is not intended to be a better version. It's intended just to show fans what it could have been. It's like a what if. So he still felt like, well, there's still an alternate version of this that's still watchable. It's still not so long. So let's try to cut that together. So he kind of went off and made a pseudo director's cut. It's like, it is a cut the director made. It's just not the traditional definition.
The preferred version, yeah.
Right. So we had a very carefully worded introduction in the booklet about that to explain to people. But in any case, so that was the quadrilogy experience, was just putting all that stuff together and interviewing, I think it was about 80 people, and across different continents. And then not knowing if we'd get James Cameron for a commentary until like right at the end, like that was one of the last things we did, and that would have sucked not to get him, and he gives one of the best commentaries I've ever heard. I mean, I thought he was fantastic, and
yeah.
So yeah, it was a really amazing journey, that one, and then to revisit it 7 years later for the anthology Blu-ray set was fascinating, because we could fix mistakes, we could kind of correct some things, but then we added hours more content, both archival, both vintage, and then new stuff. So after the Blu-ray, the anthology Blu-ray, it's like, I don't know what more you could possibly do. I mean, you probably could. There's probably like, 5 or 10 minutes worth of stuff you could probably dig up and put in there, but I feel like we did it. So
it feels extensive. And it's one of the things I admire most about it is what you put into those feature-length docs and what you left out, and yet, to keep them a certain thing, to keep them a story within itself, a movie within itself, truly. And then the things that you took out, but that you still felt worthy of including in, other forms or little featurettes or whatever. It's I mean, for fans of those movies, obviously it's invaluable. Anyone who grew up with Starlog and Fangoria, and just a still photograph could light you up, and if you were a big fan of these old movies. And I really feel like it's hours of that kind of excitement. We'll get to why they're doing those anymore here in a bit, but so before we move on from Alien, because I got a couple other questions I want to ask you about slightly more obscure stuff, because my name's on the show and I get to do that. But what was I totally wrong about? We kind of mentioned that in the Alien show too. Well, we're wrong about stuff all the time. I mean, we're doing our best to recall stuff in this radio show format.
No, I totally understand, and I'm the same way. It's like that's usually I try to like not if I'm not 100% or at least 95% sure about something, I try just to nod and listen and smile and not really, no, it was just the way Michael Biehn tells the story. It wasn't so much that they used his imagery in the opening of 3 for the kind of the dossier screen or whatever, and then went out with it, and then he sued because they didn't have his permission. They sought his permission. It was just that he thought he was going to be in 3, and then they found out that they were going to kind of very unceremoniously kill Hicks off. That he was sort of pissed off about it, and he kind of didn't really want to participate, or he didn't cooperate fully early on. They kind of kept having to offer him money, and that was the part that I think you got correct, was the fact that he got paid more for the approval, for the clearance for that one photo of him.
Right.
Then he got paid for for Aliens. So
right.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was contentious, but more politically, not legally. I think it was just more
right.
Like,
they didn't ever come to court or anything like that, but it was that sort of there was always the underlying threat, I think, of something like that, which got him paid off, and he deserves it. He deserves it.
Totally. And I
love
get
Michael
it.
Biehn.
After the way Aliens was received and his character is so beloved, it's you would think that they would try to find a way to involve him. But I bring this up a lot when it comes to the transition from Aliens to Alien 3, not in terms of narrative story time, but in terms of our real world production time. It was like, Carrie Henn had aged 7 years, right, between Aliens and Alien 3. So if you're trying to make a direct continuation, you'd have to recast Newt, and that you would lose that emotional connection you had from Aliens, because everyone loved her, right? So then you have to ask yourself, well, all right, so let's just say we keep Carrie Henn, who I believe moved on to like not being an actress, right? She's a school teacher at some point in her career.
Exactly.
So I feel like, okay, so are you going to basically keep Ripley and Newt and Hicks and even Bishop kind of rebuilt sort of on ice in terms of their development for 7 years, like off screen? Like, what are they doing off screen for 7 years that we're not seeing, so that you could have Carrie Henn come back for Alien 3 just because it took that long to get the third movie going? And that probably wouldn't work either, because I mean, once Ripley's home, she's not going to go back ever again. She's not going to get into the mix. So
yeah, fool me once, shame on you.
It's a huge storytelling challenge. Like I said, all the Alien 3 scripts that were out there, almost none of them continued those characters. They all sort of start fresh, because what else do you do?
Right. So that's the thing, is like, you've got Hicks, who needs like at least a few months to recuperate from all the acid burns and stuff. Bishop needs to be rebuilt almost from scratch. It's almost not Bishop unless you just use his AI and all new body or something. So it's such a, regardless of how you look at the beginning of Alien 3 and how abrupt it is and how brutal and merciless it is, and how it deals with characters that we love from Aliens, some version of that was going to happen anyway. It was either going to be recasting, or their lives off screen would be so radically different by the time you'd have a continuation 7 years later. You can't do the you drifted through the core systems gag again, and you slept for 7 years, and here we are, you're on another alien situation. Right. So it's like, I get it. It's like, it was really hard to continue that story with those characters. And here's the thing I would posit in terms of the brutality of killing, just really unceremoniously killing Hicks and Newt so abruptly in the beginning of 3, is death is the theme of Alien 3.
Yeah.
The theme of Alien is ostensibly birth, right?
Yep.
The birth of the creature, the birth of Ripley as a hero, the birth of the franchise. Aliens is about survival. It's about life. It's about
motherhood.
It's motherhood. Yeah, it's about procreation. It's about all these kind of like life-centric things. Alien 3 is about death. and from the very beginning, the death of the Fox fanfare, right at the beginning of the
Right.
film,
Yep.
the death of Hicks and Newt. It's sort of like the movie is instantly telling you what it's about, and unapologetically, and just like it's telling you buckle up, because these characters that you love, like all of us, we're all going to die. We're all going to, like, everything we love is going to go away at some point, and this film is here to really reinforce that. So, and it basically says no one escapes it, and at the end of the film, we learn no one does escape it. The absolute queen of this franchise, Ripley, does not escape it. So it's a coherent theme, and it makes sense. It's not pleasant, it's brutal, but it's like, to do anything less than that, to me, would be a disservice to those characters and the franchise. And again, this is like without even pondering a resurrection down the road, which completely kind of goofed on everything that came before it. But I feel like 3 is a coherent story. It's a coherent theme. It was just very kind of like painfully put together in ways that the filmmakers obviously didn't have a good time on that film. The fans didn't have a good time watching it. It's a very painful, bitter pill of a film to swallow. But I do think there's merit and artistry in the wreckage of that film.
Well, we have a lot more to talk about, but one last thing on that. You know, your documentary on Alien 3 was edited slightly for the quadrilogy, and then it's been restored in anthology. Just not a lot of bits, but a few of David Fincher's darker moments that were actually captured in the on-set footage got taken out, I'm sure for political reasons. Like, I sort of get it when I watch it, but it's nice to see it back in there. I mean, it's nice to see it, as whole a story. And even if it's nice to have Fincher's voice be a part of it in any way that it can be. So I think that's worth saying and pointing out that that's pretty cool. Is there any behind the scenes nugget about that we might want to know?
Oh, there's plenty. I'll just say this. I'll just say that, just, so people understand that the version of the documentary that's on the Blu-ray is the best version to see. The version where it actually says Wreckage and Rage Making Alien 3, not the making of Alien 3 that's on the DVD quadrilogy set. So the Blu-ray version is a half hour longer. It has a lot of stuff restored. It has the titles of the pieces fully restored, because the titles were censored back in the day too. So, look, to their credit, Fox had always been pretty open to having the studio criticized in the content of being fairly, candid with how we told these stories. And this one was probably just too hot for DVD. It was just too much. There was just too many things involved, and keeping in mind that Fincher, you would think he would never work with Fox again, but then he went on to do Fight Club and eventually Gone Girl, and so it's like there was a relationship that needed to be preserved and protected, and a documentary about a failed alien film from many years ago was not going to tip the cart over. They weren't going to allow that, so it was delicate. And it was, I will say this, I was not a big fan of how it was handled. And that's why I took my name off of the DVD cut. However, in the time following that, and everyone kind of cooler heads prevailed, and we all kind of calmed down. And again, these are people that everyone is doing the best job they can. Everyone has their little piece of the puzzle, and they're just trying to make sure the puzzle doesn't get upended and flipped onto the floor. It's like you have to make sure this thing comes together to form something. So it was really great to be able to go back and revisit, and not just restore the cut to the way it originally was, but we actually added a few things. And on top of the few things we actually added this whole an hour and a half of what I call enhancement pods, which are kind of like deleted scenes from documentaries. So you're getting I don't know what it's 4.5 hours of Alien 3 doc material that you wouldn't have gotten in the previous version. So it's just, it was, it's a journey. All these projects are journeys, and sometimes they're painful, sometimes there's problems. I don't think anyone is actively trying to sabotage anything. It's just there's interests that need to be protected and respected and discussed. And and sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. And that was one. I think it had a happy ending. I think the Alien set.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Mean, that's one of those. I mean, that's one of the great things about behind the scenes documentaries is it's if you're interested at all in how the sausage gets made, you also have to understand it's sausage. It ain't pretty all the time. And so, can I also just real quick, the fact that you, when you said you took your name off of it at one point and put on, I believe it's Frederick Garvin.
Male prostitute.
Brings me so much joy. Oh, that makes me so happy. I have a question about one, you know, in reading up on your work and how you make your films, these documentaries. It comes up a few times. It comes up over and over about how you create a room for your interviews. I'm talking about for your when you're interviewing someone to kind of go back in time and talk about these things. You create a really comfortable room that that seems to really allow people to feel comfortable to in sharing. Can you talk a little bit about how do you approach getting someone to go back in time on something that was either wonderful or as you've discussed, sometimes it's from a challenge. It might have been from a challenging time. How do you set up your room?
And include, if you can, the idea that you're your own camera operator a lot of the time in those settings. I find that interesting.
That's been heavily overstated. I'm not sure how that began. The traditional sit down interviews, I rarely operate the camera. It's more of like when I'm on set, you know, and even now I've kind of backed off of operating on camera because it's not necessary. But a lot of times on the kind of like the modern documentaries, not the retrospectives, and I'm on set, it's nice for me to have the camera because I can get into the orbit of the filmmakers better than an EPK crew, electronic press kit crew that has, you know, a really nice big professional camera, and you got a sound person recording sound. It's like an armada of people kind of moving around. And it's like, well, that's
right. Who they're documenting for sure, but their primary goal is to deliver material that helps promote the project.
That's the top layer goal, but they're definitely documenting for future use. They're trying to future proof everything.
Right.
But so in terms of like the sit down interviews and the retrospectives, I've only had to operate the camera a few times. That's because I was the only person, you know, there to capture it. But
there's not a lot of camera moves in those anyway.
Right. But you still need to have someone there in case someone starts doing this and starts moving around. So, but no, what I definitely try to do is when it comes to the retrospective documentaries is, you know, approach it as if I'm a fan, and 99% of the time I am. You know, I'm very curious about the process. I respect their art. I just try to, you know, be a friendly face, and I also try to engage them in such a way that, you know, I'm on their team and I'm there to make them look good. It doesn't mean I'm gonna whitewash anything, or I'm gonna like try to make it seem like so-and-so's a genius and this film was a breeze to work on. It's like, no, we're gonna get into the truth of it. We're gonna get into the honest stories, but you can trust me that I'm not gonna twist it or pervert it or exploit it in such a way that makes people look bad. Right. You know, usually when you see the clash of creative people, it's not necessarily that it's ego driving it. Of course, you know, in the movie business, ego is everything. It's huge, but once you have that level playing field of everyone has an ego, then it's sort of like who has the best ideas and what's the best way to achieve the story and the visuals and the everything that you're trying to achieve. And that's where sometimes you get clashes and you get people kind of rubbing each other the wrong way. And I try to focus on the process of it, not necessarily the soap opera of it, you know. And I feel like that allows for an easier conversation with people when they realize, oh, you're not here like, you know, Entertainment Tonight trying to get the juicy dirt on somebody.
It's not alien behind the music or anything like that.
Right, exactly. So, you know, we're here to kind of do it's like a pleasant autopsy, basically. if there's such a thing, you know, it's sort of like let's unearth this and let's remember the good stuff and the bad stuff is there too. But you know, let's try to assess what happened.
Yeah, because it comes back. You know, I don't remember who the first person to say it, but it's something that, you know, we've brought up in the show in the past, but it's sort of an old adage that it's amazing anything actually does get made let alone something good gets made, because there are so many cooks in that kitchen. It takes so, it's a true collaborative art form. And
certainly on the level of it's collaborative art form at any level, but on the level of films like we say Gladiator, and I mean,
so
Herculean undertakings.
Yeah,
not to mix metaphors, but
yeah, that's great that you. I mean, I like to hear you say that it's that it is about. Look, we're not gonna. It's not a puff piece, but let's celebrate even the hard times, because as we all know, those hard times may lead to something better being done down the line, or hopefully going to avoid some of those issues, or maybe they're learning experiences.
There's a journalistic integrity to it that's very, very cool, that shows up in particular the retrospective docs, which are, we talk on the show about, we do our best to include this in whatever we talk about, telling the story behind the story, which those just are the epitome of that. And that's why they appeal. There's a few of the more on-set active, this is what happened, we have no distance from this to judge it, or whatever projects that you did, which are equally fascinating in a sort of different way. But before we leave archival stuff, I want to ask you about dueling directors. You probably won't get asked about that too much.
No, I think you're the first.
It's dueling director. We go back in our sword fighting episode, you'll hear us talk about a film called The Duelist, which was Ridley's first feature film after having done so many remarkable sort of advertising projects. Without getting super into what that movie is, or taking our time with that, there's this on the original Paramount DVD, and on the it's been carried over to the Shout Factory Blu-ray. There's this kind of I just think it's this really different. It's just different in a simple way, but sometimes that's like where the revolution happens. A simple idea. Where there's this one director, Kevin Reynolds, who directed Fandango and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and very famously Waterworld and a bunch of other things. And he is in this sort of simple interview segment for a modest film, which I assume the budget on the DVD for that was minuscule compared to something like Aliens. You have Kevin Reynolds interviewing, who loves the film, like a friendly face, as you say, like there couldn't be a more friendly guy talking about The Duelist with Ridley Scott. And I love it because it's fun to listen to two filmmakers talk. I love the Soderbergh, James Cameron commentary on Solaris, because it's just these two radically different people, and to hear them discuss things in a bookish kind of way, not the bit nuts and bolts, but just the themes and storytelling and stuff, is riveting. This the same way. And I thought Kevin brought out a different side of Ridley in a way that we usually see, which I think is kind of brilliant. Of course, I'm a big fan of Duelist. So any ideas about that, or how that came about, or because I really think it's cool.
Yeah, that was fun to do. And it's funny because you are the first person to really ask me about it. So I'm like kind of dusting off the memories. But
sure.
I was sharing office space with.
Oh no, he froze up.
So I was sharing office space with another production company, DVD production company, and my friend John Mefford, who's a really great behind the scenes producer. He was working on The Count of Monte Cristo. And he was going to have Kevin Reynolds come in to do a commentary or interview or something. And one of my all-time favorite movies is The Beast, directed by Kevin Reynolds, which I think is a phenomenal film.
Agreed.
And I love Fandango too. I haven't gone to USC Film School. I definitely knew about Kevin Reynolds quite a bit. So it was like I was a fan. I said, hey, could I say hi to him when he comes in? And John said, sure. So I got to talking to Kevin. I had him sign my Beast DVD and my Beast one sheet, and he really wrote a nice little thing on it. And then that began sort of a two-pronged Kevin Reynolds sort of relationship. One was because he mentioned to me how much he loved The Duelist, and by way of Count of Monte Cristo being another sword action movie, he said, man, if you ever need anything from me on The Duelist, let me know, because we were warming up to do The Duelist. So I thought, well, it gotta be so great to have the two of them talk, So we did that. And we set up at Ridley's production, his commercial production company, RSA, in West Hollywood. And what was really amusing, I remember, was we had it set up very well. I mean, I loved the way the shots were, and it looked great. And that was not at all what the final result was, because as soon as those two guys got in there, they reset all of our cameras, our behind the scenes cameras for DVD featurette. And they were like, no, I should go over here. And so they were like pleasantly arguing with each other about where the best places to put the cameras. And so I look at that piece now, I think I never would have put those cameras there, because they're kind of like over the shoulder, and they have to look, it's really awkward. But it got them to look at the video screen to kind of remember the movie as like a video commentary of sorts. So they were literally dueling directors on the setting up of this featurette. So that was fun. And then I went on to produce the DVD extras for Kevin's film Tristan and Isolde, which Ridley executive produced. And I got to go to Prague and Ireland for that. And that was really great to watch Kevin work, because he's a very unique filmmaker. So anyway, so that was the Kevin Reynolds story. And dueling directors kind of allowed for both my fandom over The Beast, which I can't recommend enough as a great war film, especially nowadays, and then Tristan and Isolde, like that was kind of a great twofer that came out of the Duelist experience.
Very cool. So I sort of lost my train of thought. I just think it's a fantastic extra. And it's fun to hear about the camera angles, because they are decidedly different than what you're used to from that sort of thing. Yeah. This is very, very cool. And Tristan Isolde, I think, is a sort of underrated movie too. That's, beautifully shot and sort of interesting story, in a very palatable, kind of told in a very palatable Hollywood way, that I kind of dig. So we can't get too much into Dangerous Days. I'll just say that the Blade Runner set, just so I get this on the record, because we want to move on to, the films that you've directed yourself. I just believe that's from a home video perspective, before we start talking about home video briefly here, getting Joel to warm up the fanfare. I think it's the finest collection just ever. I mean, it's got all the cuts. We talk about how valuable that is, and how providing everything sort of takes the controversy out of any differences between the things. I really believe the Blade Runner set is proof of that. It's the living proof of that. The Dangerous Days feature-length doc in itself is, I think it's the best sort of, again, best. There's some that are really extraordinary that have come out, in older eras and stuff that are kind of fly on the wall, but I think it's the best, backward looking, historically, with its historical context burnt into it.
Thank you.
Doc that I've ever seen. And of course, I'm a massive Blade Runner fan, and we got the director's cut there back in 92 or whatever it was, and started watching it in widescreen. And that's a film that wasn't even super popular in its day, and it's grown in esteem. And then just to get that, and to get all that work, and to have everybody on there, I guess Sanderson isn't on. There's a couple people missing, a couple people who've moved on, but virtually everyone.
We invited everybody. We invited William Sanderson. We invited Vangelis. I spent months speaking with Vangelis's lovely manager named Cherry Vanilla. She was wonderful to talk to. And I was getting ready to scramble a crew to fly to Greece to interview Vangelis. And it was such a painful job to have to go to Greece for an interview.
The things that you do. The things you do.
Wow. But it just it wasn't meant to be, and eventually you run out of time, and you gotta finish.
It's not missing much. I mean, Vangelis's voice is in there. You got him in there, even though you didn't have him.
No, I mean, you mean like kind of spiritually, you got his voice.
Well, the music, and it's not like you don't talk about him. It's there. His work is represented in there.
Yeah. No, we try. We try to milk the Vangelis story as much as we could without actually having Vangelis, and it's difficult because. And then like a few weeks after the box set came out, he gave an interview to the New York Times. I was like, oh, dude.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's just awesome. And I just recommend everybody see it. Even if you're not a Blade Runner fan, I can't imagine not being fascinated by the the twists and turns, and more importantly, everything's in there. But what I love most about it is that it accurately represents the change in perception of the film over time. Like that to me is this kind of story of Blade Runner, the story behind the story of it, at least. And that's there, you know, just you see just Harrison Ford's sort of how it feels almost like over the course of the documentary, he grows to love the film a little bit more than he did before somebody made him sit down and talk about it. It's kind of a remarkable thing to see on screen.
Well, it was interesting because we got Harrison out of the 80 interviews we conducted. Harrison was number 2. And I thought I'd be lucky to ever get him. And he said yes right away. And it kind of caught me off guard because I thought we'd be deeper into the interview capture process. Sure. Our first interview was Alan Ladd Jr., who was also our first interview on the Alien set. So he's kind of like the good luck charm interview, I think, for all these big projects, because he's great. But we had Harrison, and we were going to lose him to Crystal Skull had we not, pounced when we did. So I wish I could have interviewed him later, because I think more stories would have come out from the other interviews that I could have then gone to him with. But he was wonderful, and he told that great story about the recording of the voiceover that I love, and that was the first time I think I've ever been truly starstruck, where I was like literally just like, oh my God, yes. It's Han Solo, it's Indiana Jones, it's Rick Deckard right in front of me. He was like this hero, this movie hero for me growing up as a kid, and he tells that great story about the voiceover session, and he finishes, and all I could say was, "Cool." and he goes, "No, it wasn't cool. It was terrible." And that's when I realized, okay, get your head in the game, snap out of it. And then I was better for the rest of the interview. But yeah.
Man, that's fun. And
that's great.
And the other one I want to touch on before we move on to a video corner, although like I say, there's so many, but Furious Gods, because everybody knows who watches the show, I'm a huge Kingdom of Heaven fan. I mean, I'm a huge fan of so many of these things. I'm not even a huge fan of the Garfield Spider-Man movies, but the just the extra features and the sort of story that we have that's preserved in time over those is fascinating and interesting. The reason I bring up Furious Gods is because I think your Matchstick Men work too, but Furious Gods, I think, as far as you're on set, you're capturing the things happening in real time. Certainly there's some commentary in there mixed with the different artists and stuff, just like your other work. But what's different about it is that it reflects all these opinions while the film's made, before the film has had a reaction of an audience, before the film had a box office success or not. It's not this 10 years down the line where everybody's reflecting on something. It's very immediate and kind of amazing, and it captures everything about, because there's mixed opinions about that. My own opinion is mixed because there's so many things about Prometheus that are just incredibly wonderful, and there's so many things that are kind of frustrating and weird. And seeing how that came together, I mean, I think it's a brilliant piece of behind the scenes filmmaking, because you really, when you turn to it, you get kind of all your questions asked. You captured all those big decisions, and like you say, the problem solving inherent in a piece that's large, and you captured just the scope of what that was. It's kind of an intimate film, I think, when I watch it. It's a lot of wide shots of the planet and stuff, but Ridley deciding to do that all on these practical sets and stuff is incredible. Found the 3D stuff less interesting, but that's just me. But anything you want to say about Furious Gods and just what you think of it?
I mean, it's
just the limitations of not being able to have that, where I'm telling you a story about what happened to me back in my life.
But it's interesting because, to me, here's the thing with Prometheus is in doing the Alien Anthology set and the quadrilogy before it, I always had this like fantasy of, if only I had a time machine and I go back to like 1978 and start documenting Alien at Shepperton, and just try to, but treated it like the modern behind the scenes coverage where you shoot everything. And, you have GoPros and you have drones and you're just like going nuts shooting stuff. And I thought, I'm going to approach Prometheus as if it were Alien, like I was going back in time. So the documenting was fun because we had total access, and I started documenting it probably a year or more before shooting even began, because as soon as Ridley signed on to it, then began this really kind of like extended development process of not just the script but the art department. And Arthur Max, who had the kind of the war room set up in LA, allowed me to kind of go down every now and then and just shoot like what's new in the war room, what's the new art. And Arthur explained this to me. Why is the previously 14-foot tall elephantine alien creature now a 8-foot tall white bodybuilder dude? Things like that. And he would explain. And the thing is that I, as a huge diehard fan of Alien, it even though there wasn't the retrospective, kind of prism to look at everything through, I could still imagine like, ooh, I don't know if that's going to work, or ooh, I don't know if I like that, but still giving everybody the respect of, well, let's see how it turns out, because you might have a vision that I just don't have, and we'll see. And sometimes I was very pleasantly surprised by what they pulled off, and something I thought, ooh, that looks a little janky, was really great in the film. So it's like at that point you realize I need to trust them. They're trusting me to document this, so let me trust them to do their job, and let's just see where we end. Let's see what the final story is. So even though there wasn't that sort of like retrospective, like, well, if you had to do something different, what would it be? I still could like look at things and target topics and say, okay, that's going to be a hot button issue down the road, so let's cover it, and then we'll have it banked. And if there's some story to be told there, then we'll have it. So Prometheus was a lot of fun because of that. It was almost like a puzzle in real time that we were trying to figure out, but having the access to do it was gold. Like, yeah, not in pre-production, especially, to being on meetings and to see early designs and early ideas that some developed into something close to what's in the film, some were abandoned for something else entirely. That was awesome. And then being on those sets was like, I mean, again, I became like the 11-year-old who saw Alien opening night at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood. I became that kid again, walking around to see the giant chair and all, all the stages that were just, beautifully built and designed. And that was all good stuff. So, it was easy, that one. I mean, it was a lot of hard work. Don't get me wrong. It was a lot of hard work, but it was pleasurable. It was fun. And that made it easy. And it's funny, just as a side note, so I shot a lot of the pretty much, I think, all of the pre-production stuff that I used for the documentary. There was an EPK crew that shot some early stuff at Pinewood. And then when we began production, I kind of split between, whenever I was there, I would shoot. But when I wasn't there, Vanessa White, who was my partner in capturing everything on set, she did a phenomenal job, and she went on to the Iceland shoot and everything. I was watching Ted Lasso yesterday, and she's like the DP of that show now, or whatever. Yeah. She's in the end credits. I'm like, oh my god! Like there's Ness, who did Prometheus behind the scenes with me, and now she's she's in the big leagues with Ted Lasso. So I thought that was really great to see, because she was great. But anyway, so that Prometheus was, again, hard work but fun work, and I'm very proud of Furious Gods. I think it's one of the ones that feels the most like polished, coherent. It wasn't, I mean, it's not that it wasn't rushed. They're all rushed, but at least it felt like, okay, we delivered it safely. I mean, Dangerous Days, I look at Dangerous Days, I see like a million things I'd change, or I'd polish, or I'd tweak. Furious Gods, I feel like, no, we got that one. That's good.
It's really, it's extraordinary. I mean, like I say, I treasure it for sure. And lastly, on the making ofs, I want to talk just a little bit about the Twin Peaks stuff, because I think that's like just knowing your work and feeling like I know what to expect. When I watch a doc, I haven't seen them all, but I've seen a whole bunch of them. That stuff just completely, I mean, I guess you would expect for David Lynch and Twin Peaks. It's just, it's style. It's totally out of left field, which is to say that it has this, not that your stuff doesn't have style, but it has a style that is front and center, I guess, in those, even though they're kind of behind the scenes. And there's three different ones. And I'm going to forget the proper names of them. What's the one called? I've got your page up here because I knew I would remember. I knew I would forget a whole bunch of proper names. What's the one called where you just follow Lynch around on the set?
That's A Very Lovely Dream.
A Very Lovely Dream. Yeah. So good. That's amazing. And there's something else to it. I don't know if this just happened because you were working with these people in these setting. Obviously the one where David interviews his characters, that's going to be it's a stylized idea. But even the one where you're the fly on the wall behind the scenes guy capturing this sort of, it still has a weird, surreal sense of wonderment to it. And I just am kind of amazed. What of that did you have to kind of pre-plan, and what of that just happened and you just happened to be there to catch it?
Well, I was kind of summoned to do that almost as a backup. I was originally not going to do that because David has a documentarian named Jason S., who has like the full carte blanche to like go in and document everything, as you see in his pieces in the box set. Those are crazy fly on the wall, like what he got. Yeah. And I was working on a Star Wars project actually at Lucasfilm in San Francisco, and I just happened to be like halfway to Seattle, and I got the call from CBS to say, hey, it's the first. It's like it was early on in the shoot for the season 3 or whatever you want to return or whatever you want to call it, but the new season, and Jason was not available to shoot, and they're basically back at all the original locations, and no one's there covering behind the scenes. Can you kind of scramble and get up there? So I did. So I left a galaxy far, far away. I went to to Twin Peaks, and that was surreal. And one of those moments where I thought, man, I wish I could tell my child self how awesome this job could be from time to time. And so I was ostensibly there just to cover for Jason, just to shoot footage for him that he could possibly maybe use. But his style and my style are very different, and it's not because we couldn't coordinate. It's just that he hadn't really. I had no understanding of what he was going for. So I was basically just going to kind of like hose the set down and capture whatever I could capture and hope for the best. And then he could cut that into something that he was going to construct, having no idea what he was going to do. So I shot it very traditionally, just thinking, let me just capture basic things and try to get in for the good stuff and try to have fun with it, because it is Twin Peaks, but it's not my baby. I'm just helping out. So then, a year and a half later or whatever, when they're finally getting ready to do the box set, and we're trying to figure out what to do with my footage, because it doesn't really work with Jason's style. The question comes up, could you cut something together that is still Twin Peaksy, is still kind of Lynchian, but is your own thing? And that's where, it's like the alien. It's like you morph or you merge the host with the alien, and then you get this other thing, right? Yeah. So it's sort of like, okay, so yeah, I can do my thing, but I still need to use the Lynch DNA to make it belong in that universe, And frankly, that's more fun to do something different and unusual and unexpected than the traditional thing, which a lot of people, that's all they expect from you. That's all they want from you, frankly, because they don't want to have to think about, what is this? What this is different. I'm not used to this.
Even behind the scenes, they want to define you. You're the guy who does this, and this is what we want. And if we wanted something else, we go to some other guy. And I get it.
So basically, the brief was just, take your footage, come up with something interesting that's not the usual thing, that has just some kind of different vibe to it. And being a huge David Lynch fan and loving his work, and it wasn't me riffing on his style, because you can't. There's only one David Lynch, but you can still kind of like say, I'm going to enter into a stranger entry point into this behind the scenes content, and not strange just to be weird, but like just try to find a different perspective, try to find a different style, trying to find a different tone. And try to make it maybe a little more cinematic, for lack of a less lofty term than that. And I think we did. I think it's a fun piece, and it feels good, because there's a lot of love, I think, for Twin Peaks, not just from the fans, but from the people who make that show, that universe. And I it's like, not everything is Alien 3, not everything is Blade Runner. You can have a very pleasant set. That still has certainly creative conflict, but that's the good creative conflict. That's where the ideas spark out of. So anyway, that one was a lot of fun to do. And it was great to kind of like, take the handcuffs off and do something a little bit different with the final piece.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to use that.
Cool.
Actually, we're going to do this in a different order, Joel. I'm going to use that as
Okay.
a transition into your 2012 feature film, Crave, and we'll do Video Corner at the end when we're tired and can just be goofy. You directed your own feature. I can't remember all the names of the stars, but it features a couple of familiar faces, Ron Perlman, notably, and Ed Furlong's in it. Gives a really interesting and fun performance in it. Mm-hmm. It's funny, Crave. I hadn't heard of it, so I'm sorry about that. So I hadn't seen it until just this week.
Most people haven't.
Yeah, but like I said, I didn't come across it when I'm a fan of yours, so I thought it would at least have been on my radar, and it totally wasn't until we were preparing for this interview. I checked it out, and when I was done watching it, because I only had a couple of days, I kind of wanted to cheat a little and see what other people thought of it. So I'm going online, sort of reading these reviews. They're all, 10-ish, 8-ish, 10-ish years old. And it actually was telling to me. So this is my way into talking about Crave. There's two kinds of reviews for Crave. Truly, I mean, I didn't find a third. They're the people who sort of let themselves be kind of taken over by the movie's sort of strange vibe and by its deeper meaning, and seem to truly enjoy it and even be affected by it. And then there's this other people who feel they were tricked into watching it. You and I were joking about the trailer for your short Love Bite, and how the trailer is sort of misleading, I think, in a kind of fun way. But we love trailers like that. We love the trailer to tease us a little, and we don't really want to know the whole story. It's like when you watch the We Are Marshall trailer, and you literally get all 3 acts, 2 separate triumphs of the human spirit. You see the entire film in front of your eyes. You almost don't need to go to the theater to see that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's, execs know what they're doing. I mean, they've tested people. They asked people. Americans have proven that they want to know what the thing is. They want to be set up for the proper expectations. Expectations are everything. And they want that delivered to them. And if they feel like they've been bait and switched, I don't want to speak for everybody, but it's a true phenomena that audience can really get ugly and turn against something. Crave's amazing. Can we show the festival poster of Crave, Joel, if you have it handy?
Yeah, that's the first one.
Yep. This is the Comic-Con. That's a very cool poster. And what I like about this poster is that it feels like this is the self-image of what this guy kind of wishes he was, almost. Mm-hmm. And it's Josh Lawson and Emma Lung. They're worth mentioning because they do a really nice job in the film. Then show what's kind of ended up being the theatrical poster.
Yeah, okay. Hold on.
Or it's
ooh, that's not the theatrical poster.
That isn't. What's this?
That's like a home video poster I hated, but I allowed because it's like after Inception, everyone had to put cities upside down, and I was like, that's got nothing to do with this movie, but if it sells,
I don't remember the helicopter attack either.
Yeah, there's no helicopters. There's no. And I think it's funny that they put a literal dumpster fire
on fire. I know. That's actually my favorite part of that poster, because I feel like that's at least kind of tapping into more of what your movie is.
But no, if you go to IMDb, I think the final poster is okay. So this is funny. This is the DVD. This one cracks me up. This is the one that Walmart approved. And literally the bottom 50% of that poster is not even in the movie. It has nothing to do with the movie. He never carries a unconscious woman. Like, that street is never in the movie. It's bizarre to me and there's no revenge in the movie. That's the other thing. Revenge at any cost. There's no revenge in the film. And
that revenge at any cost it's carried through all of the, streaming, and everywhere I went, that phrase was front and center. I only will say this. I think it's a shame that people got tricked by like this image in particular.
Well, it's in a way, it's my fault, because I was given approval over this stuff. And I was also heavily, told that if you want to make money, You need to do what we're going to do. Right. And I told them when I was negotiating the deal, and I said, I need to have approval over this stuff. I told them, I said, look, you can put it in an old greasy paper bag and leave it by a roadside. And if it sells, great. And I think that gave them like the confidence to let me have that perk, I guess if you want to call it, in my deal. Mm-hmm. But then when I saw what they did, I was like, oh no. And then when they showed me the Walmart thing, like Walmart will accept this if it goes with this art. And I was like, all right, and it's like, you learn. And if I had to do all over again, I might've fought more, or I might've tried to develop some other idea, but I saw some other ideas. And again, it's not that they're trying to sabotage it. They're just trying to find a way to connect with people. And I learned this actually on the Blade Runner process was, we were talking about the packaging and the suitcase with all the goodies in it and all the ways to sell Blade Runner. Mm-hmm. And I was very, George Parker, who is the marketing exec and probably the biggest cheerleader for Blade Runner at Warner Brothers. He said, look, you've got the fans. The fans are going to buy this no matter what it comes in. It comes in, a white box with Black Helvetica Blade Runner, and that's it. And the fans will buy it. You need to connect with people who don't automatically buy this stuff or care about Blade Runner, or they're going to, like the people who aren't predisposed to buy this, you got to connect with them. So with that in mind, and when the Crave stuff came up, and I thought, oh, okay, so even though this does not accurately represent my movie or what I have in mind or the posters I designed, this is going to connect with people and it's going to sell. Okay, fine. And now I don't know if I would be so, blasé about it, but back then I was sort of like, okay, you guys know what you're doing. And that was like the biggest lesson I learned was like, okay, we need to have a longer conversation about these things. When you started showing me revenge at any cost in a movie that has no revenge. But yeah, I don't know if you can bring it up, but on IMDb, the main poster there, like that's the final poster.
I didn't even, I'm so sorry. I didn't give him that one.
Okay.
But I know what it is. I think it's the one with the most of the critic reviews on it, right?
Correct.
And it's the one on your Vimeo page where they're all our four principles are sort of across the.
Yeah.
Joel, if you can find that, can you?
Yep. Just give me a second here.
Thanks.
I'm asking a lot of my my internet. No.
See how tricky it can be? That poster didn't fit my narrative, so I didn't include it.
Oh yeah, that's how Ryan gets you. That's how he's so sketchy that way.
No, it's funny. You can but you can do that even by accident.
Yep.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
Like that's the mood of the film. It's kind of noir. It's very moody, but it kind of dreamy too. And that he's literally crossed the police line. He's crossed the line. He's gone, too far. So those things that represents the film,
that look on his face is kind of badass, but there's much more of what that character actually is captured there, even though it's the same pose as the DVD. Right. The DVD really looks like almost like it's going to be a buddy cop movie or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm happy to say I'm in the former group. I just was content to watch this and let it wash over me. And I know that a lot of people come into stuff. Perception is everything, and it seems to be sadly more and more the thing.
I'm glad you didn't hate it.
Expectations, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because on the festival circuit, it got really great reviews. Like most reviews were really very positive during the festival run. Then when it hit home video, it was like, it just like the reviews went down the toilet. And I'm just trying to figure out, is it because when people go to film festivals, they're more in a charitable mood, or they're more supportive, or they're just like looking for the next big thing, or they're just kind of like, they're a little bit more positive and enthusiastic versus home video. And a lot of these reviewers who just get like discs dropped off on their doorstep and they just like have to make, here's like the 20th movie I have to review today.
Right.
That they're a little bit more jaded and cynical about it. So I'm still trying to figure it out exactly, because I've read really great reviews. I've read reviews so bad I laughed out loud. Like it was so bad. Like if I'm allowed one S-bomb, it was my favorite one I read on Letterboxd was The Secret Life of Walter Shitty. I howled when I read that, because it's like I hate that guy, but I love that guy. It's like,
Real quick, personally, I as someone who has I was in a show in New York in my New York acting days, and the Time Out New York review of the show I was in began, "NATO should intervene. Crimes against humanity are being committed at the theater on 44th Street." and that was the same way. I'm like, "This is the greatest," and they're like, yeah, but it's clearly hating your show, and I'm like, "I don't care. This is so great."
That we've talked to Michael about it since he's our mutual friend, but that phenomena of what you're saying, where this is the third movie I got to watch today, I got to get this out. If it doesn't, if you just get off to a bad start with something, it can go bad from a review perspective. But the reviews I was reading, like I said, were Amazon reviews, they were Internet Movie Database, they were audience reviews as opposed to critic reviews. Because that's kind of the beat I wanted to put my finger on before we talk to you. There's a lot of things I liked about Crave. One thing that I really like about it, I don't know if you have any connection to this place, but Detroit is a real character in the thing, which is really, really cool, because I think you don't make a big deal out of it. We don't stare at cityscapes, or there's not long montages of the sunrises or any of that, but it's still, you really sort of caught the essence of what it is down on the sidewalk. Detroit, I don't know if you have anything you want to say about that, or what the experience was like shooting there.
Well, it's funny because originally we were going to shoot it in New York, and I scouted New York in the summer. I'm trying to remember the order of things. Then it was LA, and I scouted LA, and then it went back to New York in the winter to see what that would be like. And it was kind of a money thing. It was like, yeah, you can fall out of bed and get an amazing shot in New York. Like wherever you point the camera in New York is New York. It's amazing. It's incredible. But then at the time, Michigan had the tax incentive for film to try to generate more production. And so that was the big reason to go to Detroit. And I was a little nervous about going to Detroit because I only had, I didn't know much about it other than what I saw in movies or what you hear on the news, and I thought, man, I'm literally going to get murdered if I go to Detroit. I mean, it's going to be like, it's super dangerous. And I fell in love with Detroit. I got to say, I really did. I really enjoyed shooting. I mean, yeah, it was a little edgy, but it gave the film some life, and it kept me on my toes for sure. And it also is a beautiful city. I mean, yeah, a lot of it's kind of like this American ruin, but there are really, those ruins are beautiful. I mean, they are kind of like, they are art in their own way. So that provided some great backdrops. And, I was lucky. We had a really long pre-production phase in Detroit where we got to scout tons of locations. And I had this philosophy of, just because a scene takes place in a 99-seat theater, like an actor studio theater, it doesn't have to actually be in a black box theater where you just literally dealing with black walls, black ceiling, everything is really basic. And I'd seen like a reference still or something of an empty pool, an empty swimming pool. It had like candles along the side of it. I thought, why not have a play in a pool? Like empty, take the water out, put seats in there, make it different, make it strange. And eventually we ended up shooting our big play scene at an aquarium, at the Belle Isle Aquarium, that was abandoned and had all this beautiful green tile. And I thought, see, that's cool. Like I have not seen that before. And so that was the whole approach to Crave and the locations was, let's do things that are not expected. Like just because the script says it's this, it doesn't have to be that. And I rewrote the script for Detroit. I mean, a lot of the dialogue in it, some of the references to like, the Coney Island and the street names and things like that. Those are all from Detroit and Detroit's kind of nomenclature. So that was, it was fun to do. It gave it sort of, just authentic enough to feel like, oh yeah, you're embracing the fact that you're shooting in Detroit. You're not hiding from it, nor should you. What was interesting was the same time we were shooting, the Red Dawn remake was shooting on many of the same streets that we were shooting on. And a couple times they very graciously allowed us through to like shoot our stuff. It's like, yeah, they're making this, whatever, $80 million, action movie. And occasionally our set on the street would butt up against theirs and they allowed us to shoot, which is really wonderful for them to have done that. And I believe our two films were the last two films to get out of Michigan with that tax rebate. And I think after that, the new governor, whose name I forgot, he killed it. So that basically effectively killed the film industry in Michigan.
Same thing happened here in the Twin Cities. Tons and tons of movies in the early 90s shot here because of purely because of budget and because there's lots of fun places to shoot. Yeah. Beautiful. And then poof, It's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah,
It was gone.
So,
Jingle All the Way
real
came,
quick,
and then that was
real
it.
quick,
It died.
It's proud Minnesota thing. They're back. Just passed the legislature this year. My dear friend is the head of the Minnesota Film Board, and she has worked really, really hard to get that back. So hopefully we'll start seeing some.
Consider us on your next thing. Come to the Twin Cities.
Yeah,
it's colder than Detroit, but
I saw Drive for the first time in Minneapolis. That's
right. The Gosling film, or the
the Gosling film.
Okay, that's a fun movie.
Yeah, and I love that film. But it was so weird to see, this kind of 80s style LA noir story in Minneapolis. But it was that was one of my big memories out of my brief visit there. But yeah. So
from a scripting standpoint, I guess maybe it's not scripting, it's all goes into it. But did you write that script, or did you rewrite somebody else's script? What was the process with Prey? There's 2 credited writers on it. Did you guys collaborate? Directly, or?
So what happened was I was, for many years, I was trying to get my first feature going, and it was tough. And I went through several other scripts and other ideas that I really liked, but just could not get traction with them. And I had been, because of Blade Runner, I became friends with Issa Dick Hackett, Philip K. Dick's daughter, who runs the film side of the estate. And I asked her, I said, I really want to get back into the narrative directing thing that I abandoned after leaving film school to do the whole DVD stuff. And I said, could I make a short film based on one of your dad's short stories? And she said, sure, absolutely. And she gave me 5 to pick from. And they were all awesome. But then I found another one that was not part of the 5 that I really, really liked a lot. And I pitched it to her. And she said, well, that's a special one. So let's see what you come up with. And that took like a year or two to wrangle this very typical kind of Dickian concept, but work it into a narrative that made sense. And Kalen Egan, who was working with still does with Electric Shepherd Productions, which is their film arm of the estate. He came in and we sort of collaborated on that. Anyway, we delivered a really great script that probably would cost like $150 million to make. So for my first feature, and it went from a short to a feature, by the way. So my first feature, that was like no go. And Issa even said, she said, could you maybe make something smaller for your first feature just to prove that, you can direct. And then at the time, I was living in Hollywood, and my neighbor, Rob Lawton, he had made a film called Sex and Sushi, which was like micro budget. But I was impressed that he had that he did it, and it had a kind of a confidence to it. And I asked him if he had anything. And he said, well, I got this thing. It's kind of like Travis Bickle meets Walter Mitty. And I said, oh, that sounds interesting. And then he developed that, and he wrote the first, few drafts. And we got to kind of an impasse where I just was not on board with the direction he was going. And there's a lot of it that I did like, but ultimately where it was like the third act, I had a major problem with. So we kind of went back and forth, and it wasn't working. So I basically bought him out, and I said, I just needed to make this work, to make this filmable, to make this something I'm going to spend the next year or 2 of my life on. And it turned out to be more than that. I need to make this work. So, we amicably parted ways, and then I had my way with the script, and it is what it is, but again, a lot of it is from the original draft, but like I would say the third act is radically different from what was there before.
It's really interesting because it's kind of stylized. I think when we first meet our hero, he's like you say, this noirish sort of voiceover, but I love, and it feels a little like, I feel like it's a little bit of a put on, but and it is, of course. Mm-hmm. You later you achieve these moments of really raw, honest emotion, and they stand out partly because they're part of this sort of thing that we feel like we've seen before. And as to your third act, I identified with this character, even though he's not a type of person you want to. I just feel like you either try and identify with people, or you're just sitting in judgment of them. I really related to that inner badass. Maybe my fantasies aren't the same as his, but that I'm gonna, I do this, and I'm gonna do. I just imagine myself as Johnny on the spot, being the hero, being the, and what actually happens, the reality of what happens, and the emotional toll of it. And then the big moment for every hero is where do we go from here? I have to decide. I found all that really felt truthful and honest, and I really related to it. So it's a very cool movie, Crave, but you do have to, I always like to set up the audience for, you do have to have an open mind. You need to go into it, I really believe, more like a festival goer, as you say. You know, hey, what's the next thing? What's the new thing? I mean, you got to have that attitude. If you're sitting down to watch a conventional revenge thriller, you're gonna get bitch slapped by it. And I think a lot of people out there in the world felt that way from the Walmart artwork. They didn't get that kind of movie at all.
Yeah, no, it's definitely more of a, I mean, it's kind of more romantic than it's sold. It's more trippy and strange than it's sold. It's kind of like it's everything that was not sold, basically. And it's and it's, you know, again, it's like
it's hard to sell that. I get it. So they sold what they could sell. I mean, that's the story of so many projects. That's why it kind of led off with that. It wasn't to punish you in any way. I hope you didn't take it in that spirit.
No, but I appreciate that you connected on the emotional level of it, because it, to me, that is what I really like about that film, is like it's a really intensely emotional journey that this character goes on. And I have to really credit Josh Lawson, because when I was originally casting, I had a completely different Aiden, the main character. I had a different Aiden in mind than Josh. And when Josh kind of came into the discussion, I was like, oh man, he's like, you know, he seems like the boy next door. He seems really like a cool guy, and he's like fun, and he's nice, and he's smart, and he's, you know, all these things. I said, that's not Aiden. Aiden's like this street urchin who's kind of like, you know, and then comes Josh, and we spoke on the phone. He was in Australia, and we spoke, and he approached it in such a great way, because he's also a writer director, and he's mega talented. And we had a discussion of the script from a writing point of view, and that was great, because previously there was another actor who almost got the part, who's like a name actor, and we only spoke about it from an acting point of view. And it was like the whole conversation with me pitching to him like, hey, come be part of this movie, and trust me, it's my first film, but I'll work with you. And it was kind of like that, kind of, appeasing a star, you know?
Yeah.
And Josh came about it as a filmmaker, like a true dyed-in-the-wool filmmaker, an actor, sure, but also a writer and a director. And that gave me the like true confidence to say, let's do this together. I mean, I didn't have you in mind, but let's try this out. And he almost immediately won me over with kind of a nicer version, or maybe nicer is the wrong term, but more human, more relatable, so that we could all kind of like say, yeah, okay, he's dark, he's twisted, but there's some of me in him, you know? And I think Josh really crystallized that in a way that, had I gone stranger and funkier and weirder, we wouldn't have gotten that.
Yeah, no, that's what resonated with me the most. I have to say, in the whole story, was that it's just like that we all go through that in our minds. You know, the film makes a game of it at first, and then the game, you know, when reality starts seeping in, it just gets more and more intense as it sort of barrels to the end. And I just thought that was very cool. It, especially the disaster of the end, is, it's just we set ourselves up for stuff. We think it's going to be something, and the reality of what it is sometimes is so humbling and horrible, and it's more nightmarish than any like cheap stunt we could dream up in our imaginations. Really is. The film delivers on that front, really, and Emma too, really brave and awesome performance, and just the way the actors sort of kept up with, you know, what was fantasy and what wasn't. Joel and I are both actors of a type, so that we tend to come to it a little bit from that perspective. But I really, really admired that a lot. I loved Ron's, you know, you got to make it happen speech, or, you know, got to do something. That was I love whenever great. Some sage character gives the exact wrong advice at the exact right time.
Right.
It's always delightful, and he nails that.
Yeah, no, Ron was great. That was amazing to get him on board like that. I mean, because we kind of lived near each other in LA, and I'd run into him at the market every now and then, and it was just sort of like, I remember the first time I saw Ron after we made Crave, and I saw him at the market. He gave me a big hug and everything, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Crave, it's a good movie. I didn't think we were making a good movie."
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
It was like you and me both.
Okay, so this latest thing, we were both got the honor to sort of check out your short film that's making the run in some festivals and stuff. Joel, you got a poster for that one too that I did.
Yes, I do. I do indeed. At least
Mm-hmm.
we've got like 85 different posters for the short for a short.
Yeah, they were hard to come by in a way I could show online easily. But there were a whole bunch of them. We're going to use one for the shingle for the episode as well. The red hands reaching out in the front of the truck.
Oh well, let me give you. I mean, you can always ask me. I'll send you the real stuff. So I'll send you the official.
That's a cool one.
Poster.
Sorry, I guess I
just so the audience can see this before we make our pitch for it.
Yeah.
And barrel. There we go.
Yeah, that's pretty much the original, the very first poster we did. Which I shot with my iPhone between setups on the set.
It captures a bit of the essence of what the thing is, I have to say, and those two characters too. I mean, just a still photograph, but the character comes through there, which I think is kind of neat.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
hear that, Apple? Send him let's send him a free phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to capture sort of like the darkness of the post-apocalyptic vibe, but then also the kind of the whimsy by having our cute little pup in there as well.
Yeah, the
dog and the baby carrier is awesome.
Yeah. The dog is a game changer because it is a different. It absolutely is a different a vibe, and it's casting a dog. Did you have to cast that dog? Did you go through, or was it?
So that's my wife Carly, not the dog. My wife Carly, who came up with the original idea for the short, and then we wrote the script together, and that's our dog, Bella. And it was just funny, like literally about 2 weeks before shooting, it was like that late in the game. Carly had just gone, because Carly loves to take Bella places, and we go to like farmers markets and things. And this is all pre-pandemic, by the way. And she got a baby Bjorn to carry Bella in, and Bella's always like super popular. People want to take pictures with her and all that because he has like this little dumb dog with a tongue hanging out, just kind of going to places. So Carly had that. I thought, what if they had a dog, this couple, like just to add a little bit of like to basically add a twist to their dynamic of being in the truck, and have the dog almost comment on their situation in a way, right? And so, and because Bella is super sweet and easy, we thought, well, let's try that. And how funny would it be to see this dog in a baby Bjorn? Because I feel like in the zombie apocalypse, you don't want to have your hands full with carrying a dog and a bag and a gun or whatever. So have the Bjorn. And also because when I was in film school, I was a big fan of John Woo. The one sheet for Hard Boiled was Chow Yun-fat holding that fat baby, that cute little baby with a shotgun, which I thought was such a great image. And I thought the combination of badass but lovable parent was a good match. So that's where she came in. So it was our own dog, and we set aside a long time on set to shoot her, thinking, it's going to be really tough to control an untrained dog in a situation where she has to perform. And she knocked it out like shot after shot. It was like she was born for it. It was crazy.
She's so over the industry. Oh.
I know. And by the way, she was treated better than anyone else on set because we're shooting here in Georgia. It was wicked hot. And we had my car on all day with the air conditioning. So between takes, she'd go into the car, be fully air conditioned. She'd have water and snacks, and people would come by and hug her and pet her. And she was treated like a queen. And then we discovered, she's very jealous of other dogs. So Kyle, who plays the lead, plays George, he has a dog named Pippin, who they brought to set. But we kept Pippin away from Bella. So Bella didn't know that Pippin was there. And then when we needed Bella to go crazy and bark because it would be a zombie or whatever, we just kind of like lifted Pippin up into her eye line. and he's just like that. And Bella went ballistic, while we're rolling. And then it got to a point where we didn't even need Pippin. We were just like, we would knock on the side of the truck, and she freaks out when we have deliveries at the house. So it's like every time we knock on the truck, it'd be like door, she'd go, Arr! So it was kind of easy to get her to perform. And that was fun. And by the way, the truck is notable because there's a lot of in-jokes in Love Bite, but the truck is notable. It's the truck from Ant-Man and the Wasp. That Ant-Man, when he becomes Giant Man in San Francisco and uses that truck like as a skateboard in the city.
Yeah. That's the truck.
That's the truck from Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Very cool.
I think that means that Love Bite is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's in the MCU.
Canon, yeah.
That's right. It's canon.
Yeah, wow.
That's gonna be part of the What If series.
And I believe there's an upcoming episode of What If that is zombies, Marvel zombies. So.
Oh wow. There you go. That's all synergy, baby.
Like Kevin Feige, give me a call.
That's awesome.
It's fun. It's a zombie siege movie, but the problem, unlike most zombie siege movies, isn't how do we get out of here. The problem is something else entirely, and it's fun. I mean, I don't. You said I could say whatever I want about it, but I just do not have the heart to. It's like short fiction, it's short films. They don't all have to be this way, but they are largely have a kernel of an idea with some sort of payoff, often a twist, doesn't have to be, but some sort of idea that you kind of nail. And I people who are into zombie films and have seen a lot of them, this is an easy breezy 16 minutes of your time that will feel very familiar and a little different. And there's a comedy, and as you say, I don't know if the film's Crave, I really believe, has romance at the heart of it. Truly, it might be a weird, twisted romance, but the romance is real. It's genuine. This is about, it's about a relationship that's on the rocks and
gets worse.
And it's just barely held together, and it's just kind of, it's clever how it works its way through that in ways that are familiar and ways that are sort of unimaginable at the same time.
I think that one of the things that I dig about it is it's a movie where it's not well, what is happening here? Oh my God, the dead are walking. What is it? This is we've been in this world for a while.
There's zombie characters who have seen a lot of zombie movies for a change. They even make the point of that, which is fun.
Yeah. And so,
I always wonder about that, like on Walking Dead, when they don't refer to them as zombies, they call them walkers or droolers, or we call them droolers or whatever. And it's like, certainly in one of these universes, there are zombie movies. They know what zombies are. And I feel like in Walking Dead, they've kind of like sidestepped that. And I understand why, but we just chose to embrace it. Like say, no, zombie movies exist in our world and people have seen zombie movies. They know the rules. There's no reason to really set that up because we know the people watching it have seen zombie movies. So it's like, why waste that time? They do talk quite a bit about the virus and how it spreads. And again, when COVID hit, I was like, oh my God, like we really we had that discussion before it really happened, in a way, like you had people on different sides of an argument disagreeing about the rules of the virus. And we're still dealing to this day, we're still dealing with that. So
with no end in sight. Yeah, that's kismet, truly, that your film is about that in a big way, or at least that I don't know if it's exactly what it's about, but that's the MacGuffin, which gets us to the thing. It's really neat. We can't give you pointers to where to go see that just yet, but we expect that'll pop up places. Audience, you got to remember Love Bite and check it out. It's really fun. And like I say, I recommend Crave for all the previous reasons that I gave. Let's do it like a B segment and let's fire up Video Corner, Joel.
Okay, here we go. Ryan's Video Corner.
Video. It's the only way to get what you want to watch when you want to watch it. Action, adventure, horror, comedy, drama, suspense, romance. Great entertainment. Always a great value.
Video, it's what you want to watch.
So when I put that little jingle together, it was 4 years ago, and the video promo mixed with the dinosaurs dying off from the asteroid was my comment on what's happened to home video. Because I'm still one of those guys. I still, over here to my left, I got my library that is well preserved. I still want a physical copy of everything. I'm a total antiquated dinosaur now compared to what's going on in the world. But at the same time, I treasure that. I feel like some of that's being lost or is lost. It's hard to say. I'm interested in kind of what your take is, because we're well beyond now a quantum shift from even when we added the dinosaurs to the video jingle. The whole world is different from even when Dangerous Days comes out, which didn't seem like ancient history to me. It feels like these things I think I value, actually. So I think you do have to kind of accept things for what they are, but we're in the era of the after show, the talk back, the sort of more, like you say, you approached your interviews like you're a fan, but I think you also approach them not only like you're a fan. There's much more to them than that, than something that just worships the thing. And I lament sort of the loss of the journalistic integrity, the term I used earlier, of these things. I enjoy reveling at the fan trough as much as anybody. I'm excited to see Howard the Duck and, stuff that are more along those lines that celebrate the sort of goofiness of fandom, but I feel like the resources aren't there. As a matter of fact, I don't know that this happened, but it really felt like just some executive one day was sitting in an office someplace at a conference table and said, does anybody watch these extra features on this things that we're, shelling out this money for? And I feel like no one knew the answer. And they went to all their people who polled and figure out these things and realized it's not enough people. It's not a worthy investment, really, not from a commercial standpoint. And I feel like we kind of lost it. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I don't want to end on a bum note, but give me some hope, I guess. I know you're tied into it more than me, and you probably think about it a little bit more than me, because you're taking the jobs that as they come along that are sort of different these days.
Yeah. I mean, look, I like to think it's all cyclical, and that we'll get back there at some point to where people are interested in this type of content. I think they are, because look, around the time that the Blade Runner set came out, it was 2007. And shortly after that, or around that time, is when the economy tanked, right? Like that's when just everything just collapsed. So with that, people were spending less of their disposable income on DVDs and not only DVDs, but we were dealing with a format war between Blu-ray and HD DVD. So they were uncertain about their high def future. So they didn't want to invest in a library of one of those and the other one would win, and they would, have all these obsolete discs. So there was a lot of confusion and uncertainty, and then with the formats and in the economy, and also the fact, I think people were just kind of like, you know what, I've built a nice little home library with these really nice affordable DVDs that have tons of extras. And I've seen a bajillion different ways of how movies are made, and there's a commonality to it. It's like they write the script, they cast, they go to set. It's like they've seen that the commonality of that so many times, and that's why I rarely focus on that. I structure it that way, but I try to focus on what made this different. What were the challenges? Not what was so great about it. It's like what was hard about this. That's where I think my stuff can be more interesting when it's a good story. But a lot of the stuff that went out there, a lot of the content was not that. It really was more promotional. And there were, maybe 5 or 10 producers out there that I think were really trying to go for something special. And then a lot of what the studios were just happy with. Again, at the time, it's changed since then, but they were happy with, look, we've got stuff on the shelf already. Why waste money? Let's just pull off these promotional things we've had for years and throw them on the disc. Boom, bullet points, on the packaging. And I get it, because they're in the business to make money. That's one thing that fans have to understand, is the studios are not doing this for charity. They're in it to make money. That's why they spent the money to make the movie in the first place. So the discs are a byproduct of that, need to make money to pay people a living wage at the studio. So all of that said, it just got to a point where I felt like there just wasn't enough financial stability and support from the marketplace to warrant these really potentially expensive projects where you weren't just making elaborate documentaries where you interview tons of people and you're having to transfer old footage that hasn't seen the light of day in 20 or 30 years. And then on top of that, you're doing director's cuts and special editions that need new visual effects. And it's like, that stuff's expensive and it adds up. And it's like, there was a beautiful golden age of home video where we got to enjoy those, not just making them, but as fans to watch, and so it was just kind of like, I really feel like people think, oh, there was just like this kind of Machiavellian plot to screw us over. Like, no, it just, there was a wave. A lot of us rode the wave very well and had a really great ride. And then things shifted, and now they're kind of shifting again with streaming, and they have been for like a few years now. But when you look at something like the various making ofs on Disney Plus between like Mandalorian and Marvel and things like that, it's just like
Joel brings those up all the time on the show. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, those are great, and it's sort of like, they're definitely more mainstream. They're not as like niche as maybe some of the home video things were, but they're handsomely produced. They're really well made, and I was really blown away by this last gallery episode of Mandalorian season 2 finale, because they started talking about deep fake and blockchain and the ethics of video and audio manipulation. And it's like, this is Disney, and it's like, you would never expect that. I thought it was brilliant that they did that. So big fan of what they've been doing. And I hope that continues to get people interested in the process, not just the process, but the potential of the process, because that's changing too. The way films are being made is changing on a daily basis. The way they're shown is changing on a daily basis. It's kind of like, this is an evolving beast, and there's so many different ways to document it that we're just barely even scratching the surface on. So I hope that we'll get back to a place where it becomes like must-see TV again, Yeah. Right now, I feel like it's fans and some of the curious mainstream, kind of like fair weather fans, but it's not like the frenzy that it was at the height of DVD, where like everyone had to have DVD. And it was like pop culture, appointment television thing. So yeah, look, it's an ongoing cycle, and right now we're in a transitional phase, and we'll see where it ends up. And that's not just for behind the scenes content. It's the actual content. It's the movies, the TV, the series. All that stuff is just evolving to a point where it's like, what is a movie anymore? I mean, I know that's been debated quite a bit recently, especially because the streamers are just making so much untold sums of money, because they're producing untold sums of like product, and it's just obviously people are watching the shows. Obviously they're watching them because they wouldn't be making them if they weren't making money. So you have to ask yourself, well, what do people want to see when it comes to behind the scenes content? And that's kind of where I'm still sort of like, what, if a job comes up, happy to take it, got to pay the bills, I'll do it. But what the big picture is, I don't know. It's just like, I'm still trying to see what that next wave is going to be.
You have any sense of what's next for you? Any chance we're going to see that $150 million Philip K. Dick adaptation? I'd like to see that.
Well, there's been some new.
What would that we could just write you a check from the movie show, Joel and Ryan?
I mean, yeah, I love that Coppola is going to spend $100 million of his own money on his it's not Metropolis, it's Megapolis. I forgot the title of it already.
Megapolis. That's it.
Megapolis. But I love that. He's a player, man. Like that guy, or he's a baller, I think is the phrase. Just the fact that he spent his own money on so many of his films, and he continues to try to do it. I love that. But in terms of that Philip K. Dick project, there is some traction on it recently, and there's been discussions about how to do it maybe differently in terms of now again in the kind of like the limited series world that we're in.
Oh, sure.
Maybe it's not a feature, maybe it's a series, but these are all things that I hope yield something, because there's been much more talk about it lately than in the last few years. And again, I think it's that hunger for content, and it's like when you see people just like, like they're on social media and they're just, going on and on about any new show that hits, the streamers, and you're like, I don't have time to watch one of these things. And somehow these people are watching everything. And I feel so, left out. So I say, well, I figure like, well, let's just focus on making it, and the watching I'll leave to somebody else, because I can't keep up, So that's why, again, I say it's like, I'm like monitoring this new world and how it's developing, because it's still developing, and I don't know where it's going to end up. With COVID, it's sort of like, am I going to go out to see Dune? Because I want to see it on the biggest screen possible. Yeah. And the reviews are mostly pretty good. I'm like, do I risk it? And it's like, well, the risk has changed. You know, it was really bad. Then we had those great 3 weeks in June that we thought it was over, and now we're back.
So wonderful.
You know? Yeah. So it's like that is affecting everything. You know, the way I go to set to capture behind the scenes stuff has changed. It's like I've done 3 behind the scenes jobs in the COVID era. And, you know, it's not at all like it was in terms of having that intimacy of like, let me put a camera in your face and start shooting. It's like, there are rules, and you have to kind of measure it out in terms of how you approach people, how you capture things. And I'm about to leave soon for a big international job. And part of me, I'm super excited to like, you know, go to other parts of the world that I've never been to. But another part of me is like, what is that going to be like? You know, I mean, what kind of like safety precautions am I going to have to take so I don't bring that home with me? So again, it's like there's a lot of hesitation, but I still think the enthusiasm is there. It's just, how does that line up with reality? And reality is being very unwieldy these days. You know, it's like it's a very slippery world we're in.
Well, one of the things that I was saying to Ryan, when we were just texting back and forth a couple hours ago before we came on our computers, was you know, it's no small thing that you are still out there making things, creating and doing it at a tricky time. So that's not for nothing. And I just want to just commend you for that,
Thank you.
for the continuing hustle. And, you know, and yeah, as you know, we try not to get into the weeds too much in how these things get made and everything, but we do always try to make sure to remind our listeners that it takes a lot to get something made, and to the people that are out there that are, you know, doing it, and the hundreds of people that it takes to make. I'm sure for a 17 or 20 minute film like Love Bite, you had probably what, you know, how many people on set? 60?
60? Did you say 60?
Yeah.
No.
I didn't have 60 on Crave. That was a feature. No, I say we probably had a dozen at our bulkiest.
So then on set, and then post production, you had people who had to get involved with post production. You had people in pre production. So I mean, it takes, like, you know, like I said earlier, it takes a lot of people to make these things. So I wanted to just make sure to commend you for sticking to it and sticking out there and to ask you to keep creating, whether it's documentary stuff or original stuff. It's just been a real pleasure to have you on, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. It means a lot.
I'm going to let Ryan gush now, but as we
that says it all. I mean, we got a little bit of the essence of what you've been up to and what you've contributed to film culture and what, you know, your own particular voice and your own projects. So I try not to be too worshipful of the people that I really, really admire. But Charles really, I mean, we started off the Alien shows with him. I hadn't planned on doing that, but I just wanted people. I want people to see those things. If they're coming to us for their Alien content, huzzah! I don't want them to, you know, please tune in next week. But you really got to see, you got to see the beast within, and you got to see Maximum Firepower. You really should see those things. It's just jam-packed full of incredible stories and unique and interesting perspectives, and it's put together with so much care and love, and yet there's a wisdom, and it's not objectivity, but there's like any great filmmaker, man, you have an outsider's perspective on the stuff and the way you assemble stuff, the stories that you choose to share with us, and your just sense of what is going to be interesting and what should be told is remarkable. So I know that that's going to cross over. You can already see it in your feature work and your narrative work. So I'm definitely excited for what comes next. I'm honored to have you here. No question.
Well, thank you, Ryan. That's very kind of you say. I really appreciate you saying that. And it's like, I don't know what else I would do. To be honest, it's like, you know, it's like, this is all I've ever wanted to do since I was 7 years old and saw Jaws in the theater. I was like, I'm you know, this is all I want to do. It's all I can do. It's all I know how to do. But I hope I get to keep doing it for a while.
Living the dream.
That's
Is that a
awesome.
replica or is that an authentic Jaws barrel behind you there?
That is an authentic Jaws barrel.
I was afraid you were going to say that. It's seeing it back there going.
Yeah, it's production used. It's not screen used. So like it's not the A list. It is the B list, but it's still it's from the production, and it's signed by Richard Dreyfuss and Carl Gottlieb and some of the other crew members. So yeah.
We will accept you then based on that. That's
that is awesome.
Right.
Once again, thank you to Michael Klug, big friend of the show, who is, as our listeners know, has been on many times, for helping to put us in touch. And once again, thank you, Charles de Lauzirika, for coming on.
There you go.
To the movie show. I said it with oomph this time with you. It's all right. And until and that's going to do it. So once again, thank you, Ryan. We'll be back. We'll be back in a week.
Who knows what we'll be talking about?
Who knows? We would love to tease something, but Ryan and I haven't had that conversation yet. So if you have anything that you want to share with us, or any questions or comments, reach out to us at Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter and Instagram. Ask Joel and Ryan at the movie show with Ask Joel and Ryan at gmail.com, and the movie show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook. And TikTok. We're on Ask at Joel and Ryan on TikTok. So come get us on come get your 30 seconds of TikTok joy, I guess. All right. Thank you again so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye now, everybody.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker, and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.